my veins. Blue and one, I red, white, and blue in my brain. I'm Bulldog born. Bulldog, that's my breed. I was born to follow where the Bulldogs lead.
Welcome, everybody, to Inside the Kennel podcast. And it's been a while, and I've missed saying this, but I'm going to introduce you to the brave big boy, the flash dance man himself. There's a statue outside of a pub that's dedicated to his greatness. It's the one and only Dougie Hawkins. Welcome to the show, Dougie.
G'day, Paul. G'day, Matty. How are you, boys?
Yeah, good, mate.
All good?
We're absolutely fantastic, Dougie, and we're really chuffed today because we've got one of your former teammates who we absolutely love. You had a bit of cult hero status about him, in my view. It's the great man from Williamstown, Danny Delre.
Danny Delre, boys. Gee whiz. Fantastic, Matty. I don't know how many years. Did he play? 4 or 5 years with the Bulldogs?
Yeah, that's right. Look, he did actually. He played 2 years in the under-19s in 86-7, then went back
Correct.
to Italy. And then after the fight back, he came in 1990. So he played 90, 91, 92, 93, and a couple of games in 94. So just the 5 seasons there.
And that was basically probably mainly around Paul and Matty, around Terry Wheeler, taking over the coaching of 90 when Mick Malthouse obviously got the job at West Coast Eagles. We were on our knees. We're going to merge with Fitzroy, and then Danny Delre arrives, and he plays at full forward. Now, I've got a feeling, Matty Pulley, before the Williamstown stuff, I reckon he's a Western Suburbs boy. I've got a feeling he come from a team called, now it wasn't St. Albans, it might have been Crossroads or North Sunshine. Does that sound right?
That's right, mate.
Yeah, spot on. He actually lived in St. Albans, around the corner, I believe, from the Collinyook household. But yeah, you're right. He played for Crossroads, and I think that might be known as North Sunshine now. But yeah, it was a Bulldog man. In fact, I read this. You'll love this, Doug. Basically his family came over from Italy in the 1960s, and they ended up going to watch a Bulldog match. It might have been Bulldog versus Melbourne, and they thought they were actually going to a soccer match. And the uncle, the uncle said, "Whoever scores first, if there's a score, we'll barrack for that team." And they turned up and thought, "This is weird. What's this game?" And the dogs scored a point, and they ended up choosing the doggies.
That's amazing, Matty Paul, isn't it? And I think Danny's dad was Aldo. I got a feeling his name was Aldo, and he was a ripper bloke, a fantastic fella, and and all of a sudden, you're right. I don't recall Danny Delre with the under-19s. I just don't recall that, to be honest to you. But obviously, when he arrived in 90, obviously him, Chris Grant, centre-half forward, and I played in that forward pocket. So me and Danny Delre sort of controlled that goal square a fair bit of that time in that probably 3 or 4 year period that Danny had at the Western Bulldogs. So we played a bit of footy together.
Yeah. And he was recruited Matty, correct me if I'm wrong, he was recruited as a backman, Dougie, I think, wasn't he? Is that right?
Is that right, Paul? So he was recruited as a backman, and he played forward at Williamstown, and then obviously coming to the Bulldogs, he played at full 40. Well, number 26, I reckon. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He did indeed. And so it's interesting that he played some back. I think he might have had his first game on Peter Sumich, and I think he was
got a touch up.
Challenging game for him, yeah, as it would be for most.
Yeah, no, you're right, Matty. Go on, Paul. Sorry, Paul.
Sorry, mate. There's that famous story, of course, and we'll ask him about this. The famous story where Terry Wheeler walks into the showers and talks to Danny about coming along to the Bulldogs. So I'd love to know a little bit more about that. But when a bloke just walks into the showers and decides he wants to interview you, he must want you, I'd say.
I reckon, Paul. I reckon you're right there. And Terry Wheeler was a very good judge of footy players. And again, boys, the impact that Danny Delre, I think you're right, Matty. You described it pretty well. And he did have this bit of a cult following that the Footscray supporters, Western Bulldog supporters, really warmed to Danny, and they actually loved him. And we all remember his 92 final series was really amazing. Of course, we're talking 90, the survival and all that. But the thing that I remember most about Danny Delre was that 92 brilliant individual finals, boys. I got a feeling that qualifying final against Geelong, I got a feeling he kicked 5 first quarter goals. Does that sound pretty right, Matty Paul?
Well, he kicked 8 in total, right? So that sounds right, because we came out absolutely firing, didn't we, in the first half, and we probably led by 4 or 5 goals at half time, and Danny was a huge part of that. So that sounds right. What are your recollections of that game, Doug? Because it felt like we were absolutely on top, and then the pendulum swung at half time.
Matty Paul, we had control. We had control of the game, and we were off to a good flyer. I got a couple of sneaky goals in that forward pocket there, and you're right. When we come in at half time, we just felt like we were in control of the game, completely in control of the game. And then after half time, boys, I can't put I can't put anything onto it. I thought their midfield with the late Paul Couch and Gary Hockin, and I think Bairstow got a bit of the footy. Up forward, Ablett was dangerous. I got a feeling Barry Stoner was sort of playing at his best footy at that time as well. And then they had Billy Brownless floating around that forward pocket as well. So, and their back line was pretty stable, pretty steady, and they just overwhelmed us in the second half. They actually just turned the whole game around and belted us. Didn't just beat us, they belted us.
Yeah, they absolutely did. And to Danny Delre's credit, he was one of those players who, despite the belting, he just kept on going. And I remember he slammed through this incredible banana from the boundary line at the must have been the punt road end, and there wasn't much cheering in the crowd. I think if we were leading and he kicked a goal like that, it'd be just in folklore from forever, because it was just an absolute ripper. I don't know. Do you remember that one, Dougie?
Yeah, I do. I do remember it, Matty. No doubt about it. It was a terrific goal, and he had the ability to do that. He could kick those uncanny goals. And I think the next week we played St Kilda out at Waverley in the first semi-final back in '92, and on the back of 8 goals, Danny Delre only kicked 3 or 4. I know a young Chris Grant, who was actually outstanding that day. He played at centre forward and kicked 5 goals. He might have been only 18, 19 at that stage. And I remember Danny kicking 3 or 4. So there's 11 or 12 goals in the first 2 finals games. And then we got to reload because we got to St Kilda and we gave them a bit of a touch up. And we've got to now take on Geelong again in a prelim final. And I think we started okay again. I think we were around the mark again. And then they just changed gears and got us again. And I think Danny might have kicked 3. 3 again. So he's kicked nearly 14 or 15 goals in those 3 finals, Paul and Matty. So his finals in '92, I thought was really good.
Dougie, having said that, why do you think his career ended prematurely? It just came to a sort of end. I know there was a change of coach, I think, at the time, but a guy with so much talent and ability can perform like that in the highest level in a finals. What was your theory around his exit from the game?
Yeah, Paul, it's hard to put a point on it. Under Terry Wheeler, I thought he played his best footy. There's no doubt about that, and that was through that 3 or 4 year period. And if we all recall, Terry Wheeler was sacked after, I think, about round 2. We got beaten by Geelong down at Geelong and got replaced by Alan Joyce. And I don't reckon I'm not saying that Alan Joyce didn't give him a fair go. He just didn't seem to get a go.
Right.
In '94, I think Matty might have said, Paul, at the start that he only played a couple of games, and I don't know at that stage he would have been only still what
26.
Was he only 26?
Wow.
And it was all over, Paul. So it was all over. It was all over 26.
Yeah.
Dougie, he'd played 62 games and he'd led the goal kicking in the 2 previous seasons, 92 and 93.
Yeah.
And then suddenly he plays 2 more games under the new coach, and he's out the door. And then he goes across, believe it or not, to South Australia, and he kicks 90-odd goals in his first year. You'd think he'd be a chance to even come back or be redrafted, but it wasn't to happen. So he went back to the VFA.
That's funny, Paul. So to answer that question, mate, sometimes coaches can get a set on you.
Yep.
Can get a set on you and might say, listen, he's just a bit too slow now, or he might even looked him in, because he's a very laconic player. He's very, very relaxed and played with just rhythm and DD, I called him DD. He made it up as he went along, a bit like a jazz singer. He made it up. And you're right, Matt. He had a heap of tricks. But Paul, I just reckon that, he may have had a set on him, and that happens. He had a set on me as well. So
But it's a bit of a sliding.
He had a set on Simon Ackland as well. So.
It's a bit of a sliding doors moment, though, Dougie, isn't it? You do wonder if Wallace had stayed on, how his career could have gone because a lot of the time, as for players, the coach's belief in them is a big thing around their confidence and ability to play good footy.
Yeah, Paul, Matty, I'm staggered. Matty, you said he was 26. It was all over. I had this feeling that Danny Delre was in his around 30. I thought he was getting towards that 30 mark. And to hear you say that it was all over, like he's obviously arrived at 21 after trying out in the under-19s in 88, 89.
Exactly.
And then within 4 or 5 years, it was all over at 26.
Unbelievable.
And he did. He won the gold, the Jack Collins medal twice, and he. How many goals did he kick, Matty, you reckon, for his career there?
Yeah, 139. But more than 100 of them, 106 of them came in 92-3, just in those 40 odd games. So it's remarkable to hit your peak and then to just fall off the cliff. So we're going to ask him about that.
Yeah, no, he was well loved, Matty. Paul, he was well loved. He's got a very good business now. Delre Meats, they do very well. I got a feeling, boys, that his company sponsors the Hunter Cup in harness racing at Melton Tabcorp Park, it's called.
Oh, wow.
And he's got a very good business as well for his cousins, Ricky and Mark Delre. But Danny Delre was a fantastic player. And you know what he was, boys? A real good bloke. A real good bloke and a ripper bloke. And I had a lot of fun with Danny. Off the ground as well, as much as on the footy field, because he was a real good, genuine bloke. He was a Western Suburbs boy. What you see is what you get. Yeah. And that was Danny Delre. He could play footy, but...
I'll tell you what, we're really looking forward to hearing about him and hearing him describe his career and hearing about how he thought of you as well, Dougie, playing with you on a regular basis.
Well, can I say he actually wore the number 7 as a kid, so he idolised you growing up, Doug. So thanks to his uncle coming down and mistakenly thinking he was at a soccer match, you became his idol and he became a hero for many. So there you have it.
Doesn't get much better than that, does it?
Right. They thought you were a striker, Dougie, for some reason. They thought you were lethal. You kept celebrating in the corner all the time.
I love Danny Delre. He was a fantastic player and a better bloke.
Brilliant. Well, you know what? That's him ringing the doorbell, Doug. We got to bring him in.
Matty, Paul, good on you, Danny.
Thanks, Dougie.
Awesome. See you, mate.
Hey, boys.
See you, mate. Welcome to everybody to Inside the Kennel podcast. And boy, have we a ripper, a legend from the 90s, ladies and gentlemen. We've got Danny Delre. Danny, welcome to Inside the Kennel podcast. You beauty.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Great.
It's fantastic to have you, Danny. Danny, we usually start the podcast by asking, in your own words, for those people who never got to see you play, how would you describe yourself as a player? And is there any current Bulldog player that you might even link yourself to or liken yourself to?
Oh, geez, good question, Matty. Probably, I'd like to say Aaron Norton, but he's a little bit skillful than me. No, as a player, probably just a tough, hard forward, I'd say. Probably my strengths were my my strength was my bottom half, I could say, using my body one-on-one contests. So the game these days obviously a lot different, but back in the day when it's one-on-one and the balls kicked long and you had one in square and things like that was good. And I sort of worked a fair bit on my speed as well, because playing forward, I wasn't the fastest guy, but then I worked on that as probably a teenager, late 19, 20, and my speed, like my first 50 was pretty good. And that's probably helped me with me leading up forward.
Brilliant.
Danny, tell us about your younger days. I'd love to hear, this is the question that Matty allows me to have, which is great. I'd love to know what is it about your upbringing? Who were the people that were your role models? Who influenced your footy? You're a North Sunshine Crossroads boy. Is that right? I get that right?
Yeah. Correct. Yes.
So who were your
Yep.
influences and what what got you on the pathway to
Well,
the
I could
AFL?
say my family was a big influence to me. Obviously, being Italian, I was born here in Australia, but mum and dad arrived here when I was about 18, 19, and dad was a mad soccer fan, but he never knew anything about footy until about 3 or 4 years after he got here. So he would have been in the mid-20s or so. But when obviously when I was born and when I turned 6 or 7, I started playing at North Sunshine, which is back then Crossroads Football Club, and I was called the Scrubbers, under 9s, and I was going all right, had a little bit of talent. But to be honest with you, my family would be my biggest influence in my career. A lot of rellos that sort of played footy as well. Always barracked for the Bulldogs as a kid. Always, my dad obviously barracked for the Bulldogs. I did. Rellos did. So we used to go watch him as a 15 and 14-year-old. Funny enough, Dougie was my idol. So and I was very lucky to get to play with him. So yeah, growing up, it was amazing because the ethnic family that we are, we used to go to the Kennel, probably the whole wing there. If you remember the players' race, in the middle of that, we used to have probably 20 to 30 guys, Rello's cousins, and yeah, so it was really good going to watch them. And then I got to play with them, and then they were watching me. So family was my biggest influence. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, Danny, you came down as an under-19, so you're a Bulldog supporter right through your teenage years. You get down there in the under-19s as a 17-year-old, as an underage. Tell us how you went there.
Yeah, so I got drafted. I got picked in the zone back then. So North Sunshine was in the Bulldogs Western Footscray zone. So I was asked to come down when I was about 17, I think it was. So training with the reserve, training with the thirds, and had a couple of good years there. Kicked a few goals, but sort of didn't make it. I got a little bit lazy and a bit heavy and didn't make it to 19. And when I turned 19, that was my last year there. And then I went from there to Williamstown and had some really good times back then.
Danny, you returned to Williamstown after the VFA Grand Final loss in '89. You're having a shower and you look around and there's Terry Wheeler, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
What was so important that he had to walk into the shower to talk to you? And what transpired?
Well, going back, Dougie, Terry Wheeler was the coach for Williamstown in 86 and 87, I reckon. 88, 89 was Barry Round. And he played for the club as well, Terry, and coaching them. And then we played Coburg at Windy Hill in our first grand final. And obviously he was there. It was a pretty packed crowd. And we lost by about 15, 16 points that day. Did all right. Probably played some half forward. Did all right. But prior to that, I was at Willie for 2 years, and Terry was my coach as well. So I went there as a 19-year-old after the Bulldogs and started playing at Williamstown with Terry being the coach. And he was playing me back pocket. So obviously he knew a bit of the ability I had playing in the back line. So that day, the grand final day when we lost, we just come off the ground pretty dejected. I just jumped in the shower with the other boys, and that Terry come in and because obviously he's a Williamstown boy as well, just sort of shook people's hands and said, look, next time. And then he come up and said, hey, Danny, how you going? I said, yeah, pretty good. Pretty dejected, but okay. But he said, listen, this was in '89. If you remember, the Bulldogs were rallying to stay in the AFL.
Yeah.
And he said, look, Danny, I've been at the club for a little while now, reserves coach at Bulldogs. If the club doesn't fold and I get the senior job, I'm going to ring you and you're going to come down and just train. I said, no worries. And I felt $1 million back then when he said that after a game. I mean, I didn't have the best game, but I did okay. And when that rally was on, we all got behind it. Our family put money behind as well, and Bulldogs stayed alive. And he got the job, and no word of a lie, within 2 or 3 days, he rang me straight away and said, Danny, come down and train. No obligations, nothing, because I'm a Williamstown boy as well. So he said, just come down and train and see how you go. So my back was against the wall straight away. But for him to give me that opportunity I just relished it. So I love training there. I love, someone had faith in me, which was really good. And then it just started from there, really.
Yeah, that's unreal. That's probably the best shower you're ever going to have, I'd say.
Yeah,
Danny.
it's true.
So
Yeah.
I imagine you say no obligation, but you get down to the club, and I imagine there's a fair bit of pressure on you. Okay, you've had a stint down there in the under-19s. This is your second and maybe final crack. You come down, probably a fair bit of pressure, knowing that the coach has endorsed you. Tell us about your first practice match in that year, 1990. I believe you lined up on another recruit that year.
Yeah, that's you've done your homework, buddy, haven't you? Yeah, that year when Terry asked me to come down and train, which I obviously did, and then we had a practice match at Darley Footy Ground against each other, and he said, "Danny, I want you to play centre half back." I said, "No worries." So I line up centre half back on this kid would have been, well, I'll tell you his name in a minute. This kid would have been lucky to be 80 kilos, but 6'4", and he's centre half forward, I'm centre half back, and thought, yeah, no worries. But I knew he was, obviously, but I thought I'd be okay. And then he's taken friggin' 15 or 20 marks on me. I've probably played my worst game. I said, yeah, there goes my chance of making the AFL. and it was Chris Cran. So, well, you know how good Chris is, don't you?
Oh, that's incredible.
That was weird. I come off the ground, I'm thinking, it was only a practice match, I know, but still thinking, shit, got a long way to go here.
Danny, your first game was in round 3. Do you remember that game? It was a 10-goal thumping to the hands of the Eagles. You dropped.
Yes.
Spending 5 weeks in the reserve.
Yes.
And fair to say, it wasn't exactly the fairy tale beginning, was it?
No. So, to be honest with you, Paul, I didn't really expect to play that early either. Sort of my goal was that year to play 5 or 6 games, but I ended up playing, I think, 13 or 14. But you're right, that first, or 9, I think it was, sorry, that first game we played against West Coast Eagles, and I had to play on fullback on Peter Sumich. And, he was just a tower of man and destroyed me. And then, Terry just said, look, probably a bit early to play you just straight away, so go back in reserves and try your form out, and we'll see how we go. But he kept me in the back line, so I got drafted as a back pocket player. But that game, I played fullback, and it wasn't the best game I played.
No, it's challenging at the best of times to play on the Eagles, and when Sumich is flying, I imagine the ball's coming in at a rapid rate. So it's baptism of fire there for you.
Yeah. They were a pretty good side in the 90s, if you remember. They were bloody really good. So they destroy anyone. Even back at home, at our ground, they destroyed us. But playing them up there was just crazy.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Well, look, you did come back to the main team in round 9. You were back in the seniors, and we actually turned the tables against Brisbane at that point. I think Choco was on fire. Tony McGuinness, Coleman, and I think Chrissy Grant even kicked 6 goals that day. Can you remember that first game? You kicked your first goal in that game. How was that experience?
Yeah, great. I had my mum and dad there as well, so it was really good. We played at Carrara. If you remember, Brisbane was at Carrara, and they had no change rooms there. When I say no change rooms, they just had 10 sheds for a change room. And obviously Gold Coast is freaking hot, you know what I mean? Anyway, so we go there, get changed and ready to go. And we were on fire early, got a few touches here and there, kicked the goal. I was sort of balked a couple of guys and kicked the goal. So I was pretty happy with that. And after the game it was bloody nice to sort of celebrate and sing the song. And it was so good, especially being, the guy that I idolised, Dougie Hawkins, was playing too. So it was so good.
Yeah, wow. But Danny, look, you got into a rhythm kicking multiple goals on the trot, 12, in fact, in 4 games, including a bag of 4 against the Saints at good old Muddy Moorabbin. Yeah. Were you beginning at that point to feel like you belonged at the level? Were you confident at that point?
Yeah. To be honest with you, Paul, that's probably a good question, because after round 3 when I got dropped, I'm thinking, I knew that I wasn't ready for that game in a way. But sort of playing a few more games in the reserves and getting a bit of, form up and that, I knew I was ready to give another crack. The side was going all right too, which makes a big help for us. But he just wanted me to work on my forward pressure, just tackling and, if I dropped the ball, my second and third effort. So I made sure that that's what I wanted to do. My fitness was okay. And, I knew I could sort of mark a footy and kick a footy. It's not a problem, but just to do the other things, and things started to happen. Once I did that, things started to fall my way. Kicked a few goals here on Spud Frawley, and had some good times at Moorabbin. Yeah.
Danny, just quickly, when you talk about those second and third efforts, just out of interest, is that the sort of thing you can get away in the VFA? So was that the difference between being an elite player and playing at the second tier level?
Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure. Like, yeah, I was named as a lazy forward growing up. I sort of like had everything, so I could take a good mark, and my skill level was pretty good on the ground and not too bad kicking the footy. But the other things, like you just said, you had to work on, like fitness, dietitian, and just making sure that your body's ready for that contest and the next and the next and the next. So I had to work pretty hard on that. Yeah.
Yeah. And Danny, you probably remember one of the biggest games of that year, your first year, was round 17 at the MCG against the eventual premiers, the Magpies. I don't know how well you remember. You had a big say in the outcome that day, kicking 3 goals, and there was a little chap from St Albans as well who lit the stadium up. Can you remember that game?
Yeah, dude, Billy Collinyuk, Steve Collinyuk. Yeah, he was a good mate of mine, Steve. We used to go footy training together. He lived around the corner from me, so we used to go footy training together. He was good too, because if you remember, Steve, he was probably a permanent senior player, and I could bounce a few things off him, because I was, like just a young boy. Well, he's younger than me, but just sort of getting through the ranks, and he was a pretty good player. But that game there, when he waltzed around Graham Wright and kicked the goal and won the game for us, and that was something special. Then I think that's the day that Terry got us into the middle of the ground and said, look around, like if we want to play finals, this is what it's going to be like. And Terry had, to be honest with you, Matty, Terry and Paul, Terry had some really good ideas in the early 90s. He probably was a little bit of his time. Terrific coach. Like, I couldn't rate highly enough. He was so good. And, he had a lot of respect from the players, and he believed in the players. And we had a couple of good years there, and unfortunately what happened to him at the end was a bit sad. But anyway, it's footy.
Danny, what was it like? I mean, what was it like leading as a full forward out to the likes of Dougie, Choco, Plough, Axe, McGuinness, Wallace, Leon Cameron, these opponents of the football? Was it generally a confidence feeling they were going to lay it out on a silver platter for you?
The thing is, Paul, as a forward, you sort of get to know your teammates, how they perform. Like, Simon Atkins would be the guy that would sort of bomb the ball long, like kick it high and long. Leon Cameron, you can lead and he'll just hit you with either foot. Choco Roll's the same. Dougie's the same. You just sort of know your plays up the ground, and sort of made my job easy a little bit, like having sort of trust in the guys kicking the ball. And my job was to mark it, obviously, but if I didn't, I knew I was going to win it. Well, most times out of 10, win it if it's on the ground. So, so you just sort of, like, as a forward, you sort of read the play, and I reckon that's the difference of good forwards or brilliant forwards and, just okay forwards, who they can sort of read sort of the play and have that sort of step ahead of the opposition. So I had some really good players kicking it to me. Yeah, Chris Grant was one of them too. He's a beautiful kick, you know what I mean? So
yeah, and that's one of the things that's being discussed with the current team, just that synergy between the forwards and the midfielders, and making sure, you've got that chemistry to, in order for it to work. And we actually interviewed Simon Beasley a couple of months ago, and he said the same thing. Whenever Dougie got the ball out of the centre, he just knew instinctively where he was going to kick it. So they were always a step ahead. It sounds like you sort of had that connection.
Yeah. Well, if you watch, I reckon you've watched Jamara. I reckon it's taken him a couple of years, but he's starting to do that as well. Like, you see him, he's covering so much ground. That's he's an exciting player to watch. And if you what I just said, if you watch him, he's always that, step ahead of the opposition. So yeah, I think that's a bit of a skill you need to have as a forward, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's move forward to 1991. Yeah. Danny, 1991 was a year we missed out on finals, but there was an incredible game in the mud against Carlton, and that ended with a Mark R. Siri incident with Super. Now, can you tell us a little bit about that day and how close, how much we wanted to hold those guys scoreless that day?
Yeah, that was at the Western Oval, wasn't it? Yeah. Yes. Well, we were, I think half time they were scoreless, and then we're thinking, what's wrong with, let's just keep them scoreless. You know what I mean? don't be the first player for them to kick a goal on you. You know what I mean? So that was sort of the halftime and 3/4 time huddle and speech and stuff. And the boy, obviously said keep it going, and we gave it to, was it Super that he kicked the goal on, Marco Theory?
Yeah, that's right. There's some
Yeah,
great footage of him giving away a
Yeah.
free kick, and he absolutely loses. He was so dirty on himself.
Yeah, he was good. Yeah, sure, because you knew the outcome was coming from the other boys.
Yeah,
and then that game there we had we always had like hot showers, but a couple of times it was cold showers at the club, mate. I'm not sure if they turned the hot water off, but that day was a beautiful hot shower.
Well, that's when you want Terry Wheeler to come into the shower and turn your heat on. That's for sure.
Yeah. He could too, mate. Don't worry. He had that bit of nasty fire about him, Terry. He was a scary man.
Danny, 1992 was the year of the Great Hope. The list was maturing and the optimism was there after you guys returned from what was a really strong pre-season event. Did you sense that you were possibly going to be genuine contenders that year?
Yeah, we did. We to be honest with you, Paul, we probably struggled to beat Geelong during the year. We thought we could beat West Coast, and as time's gone on, obviously Geelong's been our sort of demon side. But we as a group, we honestly thought we're a big chance to win the flag. We're pretty close too. Like we finished third, obviously, but just had to beat Geelong, and that first semi-final, they smashed us by about 50-something points. But we're up. If you remember that game, we're up by 4 or 5 goals up at half time. So we could match it with them, but we had to match it with them for 4 quarters, not just 1 or 2. Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, look, we'd like to ask you a few questions about that final series because it was epic, particularly your performance. But before we do that, your first game of that season came in round 3. Now, I actually was, while I was preparing the interview, I remember going to training and watching you guys train that week. And I specifically remember you absolutely looking awesome on the track. You were just handling the ball beautifully. And I remember going home to Dad and saying, you know what, Danny Delre looked awesome there. And you got picked. And Dad said, you know what, you play how you train, watch him. If that's what you saw, he's going to have a good game. Now, you came out and blew them apart on a small SCG that day. Can you remember what happened?
You're just giving me goosebumps there, Matty. You keep going, mate. I like it. You do. Injury-free is one, obviously. Then, obviously, looking after your body, recovering and being fit. That was my biggest key because your form follows that. Like if you do all those things correctly, your form will follow it because you've got more chances to get to the contest. And I was ready for that game. Like the first quarter, I think the ball came down a few times, but second quarter, we just won out of the centre all the time. And, the one-on-ones was good. Leading was good. Kicking was good. So, I was up and about.
You snagged 7 goals. You're more than up and about. And it just set our season really off. I mean, we had beaten from memory the Crows and also the Saints in rounds 1 and 2. So we just were on a roll. And then having a spearhead like yourself coming in, I just remember the optimism as a supporter after that, thinking we're a chance.
Yeah.
And look, Danny, despite this, you can never get too comfortable even on your home deck when the team puts in an underwhelming performance. Did you ever find that there was a really hostile reception towards the team returning to the rooms, particularly in that game against the Hawks in that season?
Yes. At the Western Oval.
That's the one.
Yeah. That was it. I say to a few of the boys now at work, what was the worst game? Like exactly the question that you asked, about the crowd. Because, of these things that's going on these days. But I remember that half time, we were getting thrashed against Hawthorn, and I probably had about 2 kicks for the half and didn't kick any. I think maybe 1, I'm not sure. And we go into the race, and as we're walking in that race there, you've got, people just, spitting at you, throwing chewies and telling you all these things. And, you had to cop it on the chin because obviously you're out there trying to play, but we just couldn't get anywhere near it, and copped a ripper barrage at half time with Terry. And then after that, I think I kicked 6 that day, 5 or 6. Played on Langford. and we ended up winning. And we walked back through the race, and people cheering and saying how good you are and stuff like that. Thinking, typical, you know what I mean, supporters. But they're all, that's, you know, that's, I'm a supporter as well, and you know, like now, and you understand that you want the best for your players, and well, I can tell you now, I feared for my safety at half time. Don't worry, but I was bathing in glory after that, if you can say it.
Yeah, it's funny what a half of footy can do, Danny.
Yeah.
That's for sure. And we'll talk about you know, the opposite side of that when we came out flying. You've sort of touched on it with the final series where we came out all guns blazing against the Cats, only for it to be turned around. But can you talk us through that entire final series and particularly some of the feats that you achieved?
Well, so the first final, that was my first final, obviously, for the AFL side. I remember that week training was just a different level. Like, obviously, you know, it's September and it's a bit warmer, and you know, freshly mowed grass, all that stuff. But it was just, and the crowd, like the supporters were around helping us as well at training. We're just on a high. And then I think that Friday night when before we played Geelong, I probably couldn't sleep, and you know, just thinking about the game. And Dad said to me, he said, "Listen, you obviously, you don't play your game the night before. You play it on a day, obviously, but just try. It's easy to say, just try and have a good night's sleep." But slept, and then the next day we get to the MCG and we come out, and there's 60,000-70,000 people there, and the roar was just, and the actual level and the quality of football was played was just another level, which was bloody ripper, I tell you. And I'll never forget that, like running out and grabbed Libba, and I said, "How good's this?" You know what I mean? And Libba said, "Yeah, this is fantastic." And yeah, and then we just went on, tried to win that game, but we couldn't. Sorry, even going into half time, that game, if you remember, I'm sure you guys would remember, we were up by about 26 or 27 points. But just before half time, Ablett kicked the goal on the left foot to put them back to about 21 or 22 points. He kicked it from about 55 out, but we went in half time pretty confident. Terry sort of, you know, gave us a bit of a rap, but he said it's not over yet, and just things like that. And then it was a different side after that. They just destroyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what it's all about, Danny. But you on that particular day, you kicked 8 goals in the preliminary final. There's no other Bulldog in 140 years of our history has been able to achieve that in a final. Do you recognise the significance of that, and you know what an incredible achievement it was?
You know, you look back now, Matty, and people say, like, people still recognise you here and there, and you know, they say, "Oh, 8 goals in the final," and and that's what I hear a lot of. And I'm thinking, you know, I did play 62 games, but they remember that. But it is a big achievement. Like 8 goals is you know, in a losing finals, pretty good. And yeah, you're right. And I think 7 goals was done before me, and then Cookie. I think, remember James Cook?
Yeah,
he played the Bulldogs, and I think one of the finals he had 4 up to half time or something like that. And yeah, we were at a racetrack that day, and you know, obviously it wasn't playing. I was delisted, and the boys were saying, "Oh, your record's going to go, Danny." And I said, "No." I threw the record at the TV, saying, "Don't kick it." He might have kicked 5 or 6 that day. I'm not sure, but yeah. And obviously, you know, my son now, he's 15 years old, and you know, he knows, like he hears that people say that, and sort of, you know, gives a bit of a buzz. And even on the record, when you buy the record on the finals, it's, you know, most goals kicked in the final for the Bulldogs is Danny Delre. So yeah.
How awesome is it for you to see your name just keep popping up there? And look, you say people remember you for those 8 goals. That particular year, you kicked 70 goals. Now, you're one of only 8 Bulldogs in our history to kick 70 goals or more. And, you know, we're talking about Wood, Collins, Templeton, Beasley, Grant, Johnson, Hall, and yourself. You know, that is elite company.
Yeah. When you look at it like that way, Matty, it's you know, it's big buzz. And yeah, so I did it. No one else did it. So, you know, when I say no one else, but I did achieve it, and that was a great achievement for me. And you know, and Terry was really happy about it too. So it was good for both.
Danny, in 1993, you won the goal kicking again. How was that season for you personally, and for the team as well?
See, in 1992, we had a great year, but I remember, I'll never forget that our 91 pre-season for 92 was really, really strong. And Terry came up and said to me, he said, Danny, you need to get fitter. And I did for the 92 season, and I had my best year then. If I look back now, Paul, I'd love to say that I wish I trained harder. It's sort of the game went to another level the following year. And unfortunately, if you look at it, I sort of didn't rise with it. And then I was behind the 8 ball. So catch up footy, and it's pretty hard. We had a shocking year that year. I think we finished 9th or 10th, maybe even more. I'm not sure. But so it was just, for me, I wasn't fit enough. And that's a shame, because if I look back now and, did the hard work, and who knows, you might have played an extra 20, 30 games. I don't know. But yeah, so that was a pretty bad year for me.
Yeah, well, there was a really awesome game that I remember being at. It was round 5 against the Bombers. You took 11 marks.
Yeah.
I think you snagged 6 goals, it would have been, from memory. And there was another young player, probably in his 3rd or 4th game, who also shone that day, kicked 6 goals himself. You remember that game and that particular instance?
Yes, I do. That was Scotty West.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I think after that game, we both got invited to the Channel 7 or Channel 9 the following day on the footy show. I think I played, I'm pretty sure Wagonine picked me up after half time, and I was going right early, And because he was a bit of a worry sort of guy, because I was like, my agility was okay, and ended up kicking. I think I might have kicked 6 or 7, I'm not sure. But it was pretty good feeling, to be honest.
Strange matchup. I imagine you would have had him absolutely covered for brute strength. Wow.
Oh, yeah, get out of the way. Kevin said he was their coach, so he's you know what he's like, a bit of a mastermind. He said, I'm going to try this guy and Danny. So, but Scotty West played out of the middle that day too, didn't he? What a gun player he was.
Yeah. He was playing out of the middle, and he played on the half forward flank as well. I just remember him kicking some long range goals, and we're like, who is this kid?
Yeah. It's a blondish hair sort of young fella. Yeah.
Danny, it was 1994. Can you recall what happened after round 3?
Against Geelong again? That was against Geelong?
It may have been, but your key ambassador, Terry Wheeler, coached his last game that day.
Yeah.
We're wondering how that unfolded and what sort of changed for you.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying to you before, Matty. I think Terry had some ideas that was like, obviously, ideas that he wanted to give to the club, but I think the club didn't want to sort of have a go with it. So I don't really know the inside story, but we got thrashed that day against Geelong. But so the next week he's out, and Alan Joyce coming. Yeah,
so I guess Alan Joyce wasn't exactly your man, was he? Because at age 20, you're still in a ripe old age there, coming into your absolute peak, I would have thought. You played your last game not long after that. I think you only played 2 games under him.
2 games, I think so. And he said to me, I think he played me full back on Doc Wilden against Fitzroy at Western Oval. And and Mitten Connell too against Carlton, I think it was as well. So played full back, and didn't get any of his votes, that's for sure.
And Mitten Connell was a pretty handy player, Danny, at the time.
He was a good player. I see Mitten Connell every now and then at the golf track, and we have a bit of a chat. So it's he's a good man. He was a bloody good player too. He was 6'4" and fast.
Yeah, and he had an impeccable kicking style. I just remember he was a textbook, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was really good in front of goals, and he'd kick him from 50, no problems. He was pretty good. Unfortunately, his golf ball goes a bit right though.
And Amit Baines would love him as well. He's a Bendigo boy, I think, Danny.
Yeah. Good fella. He's a good fella. Mitten Connell, like him.
Now, you return to the VFA, the place you know so well, and the Sandful as well. Tell us about those experiences for you, VFA, and particularly the Sandful.
Yeah, Sandful was a great experience, Paul. After 94, I had Sticks Kernahan and his dad, and also the guy from Carlton, the coach, and the Kernahan fellas said, look, we want you to come down and have a run. So I did. I lived in Glenelg and rented I had a business going here with my dad as well. So Dad said, look, go. So I was 27, I think, at the time, and tried to get back in the AFL because I knew that I'd have to give it 1 year, one good year, and then try to get back in the AFL because I couldn't live outside of Melbourne, obviously Melbourne, Victoria. So did that, went to South Australia and ended up kicking 93 goals that year and won the goal kicking medal for the whole comp. We missed the finals by a game. I think the last game we played against Port Adelaide, not Port Adelaide, would have played against Norwood or someone like that at Adelaide Oval. And we lost by about 4 or 5 points, but that we needed to win that game to get in the final. So couldn't do it and didn't get drafted. And I come back and went back to Williamstown where I originally was from.
Danny, so you played for Glenelg, is that right?
No, South Adelaide.
South Adelaide. What was
South
it like?
Adelaide, yeah.
What was it like playing in the Adelaide competition at the Sanford? What were the crowds like? What were the people like in comparison to your VFA and VFL?
Yeah, I'd say the standard was pretty good. Like the standard was a bit better than the VFA. Crowds were, close to 15,000 a game, 10 to 15,000 was pretty good. The skill level was good. Like a lot of, if you remember back then in the mid-90s, a lot of AFL players that didn't make it would go back and play in the Stanford. So the league was pretty strong. So it was a good experience for me to be away from home and no family. And Dad used to travel up a fair bit and fly up and come and stay with me at the house and watch him play. And it was good fun.
Yeah, right. And
Kenny Sheldon, that's him.
Ken Sheldon. Okay.
Yes, that's him. Sorry about that.
Nice. So Kenny Sheldon would have been, mighty impressed. You came very close to kicking the ton. That was probably the closest you ever came up. If only you'd made it to finals that year, probably would have. You would have tipped it over, but not to be. What a goal kicker you were, though, Danny.
Yeah.
Can you tell us your best ever goal? Have you got one that just stands out in your mind?
My best goal, I reckon, was obviously one of them was at the MCG in the final when I kicked that banana. That was the 8th goal. So that was, although I wanted to celebrate more, but we're too far down.
Yes, you still gave it a shot from memory.
Yeah, I did. And the sort of no one really come up and said, "Well done." You know what I mean? So just like. Shit, I can't celebrate with anyone, but
one man solo celebration.
Yeah, I remember that goal. Like it was on the pocket on the train station side on Punt Road. I think Punt Road side. The ball's kicked, and I sort of dropped the mark in that second effort, and my opponent went to pick it up, and I slapped it out of his hands and picked it up, and then just snapped it for goal and banana kick, and it went through and. Got a bit of a roar, but and I did fist pump. But the other goal I'd like, it was against Sydney in Sydney. I think I was on the boundary and I snapped it from about 45 on the play and went in and I kicked 7 that day, so that was really good. Yeah.
Oh,
Danny, tell us about some of the fullbacks you played on. Who was the hardest? Who was the friendliest? Who was the funniest?
You never get any friendly ones there, Paul. There's no way. But no, Mickey Martin was the toughest. One of the toughest. Like nicest backman, I'd say, would be Gary Pert. But they're all tough. I played on Mickey Martin and Langford, Frawley. I played on Alistair Lynch as well. He was pretty rough too. Like if you went for a mark, he'd make sure you'd earn it. Gavin Brown was probably the hardest opponent. He was the same height and weight as me. Obviously, he played midfield as well. So when he come back and played full back, he was really agile like myself. So he was the hardest. I could say he was one of the hardest players I played on, yeah.
And quickly, what was the banter like? And would you like to be a forward today?
Yeah, I'd love to be a forward today. Let's go back to the banter first. Used to cop a fair bit from the opposition, obviously, especially going for goal and, and obviously, cop it on the chin and kick the goal and then just stick it right up and sort of thing. But today's day, first of all, if I could lose 25 kilos, I'd be okay. But I just think today's day that there's more. The skill level is unbelievable, and there's more time to sort of. You just have to make some kind of position, and these guys will hit it to you, mate. If you watch live footy, it's just amazing how how good their skill level is. I understand it's full time and all that stuff too, but to do it, it's pretty good. It's pretty good to watch.
And particularly with things like chopping the arms, they're so protective to
so protective. Yeah, 100%. But the game, look, I'm not sure how you guys like watching it, but if you watch a couple of good sides play, I think, and they let the umpires let it go a little bit, it's not too bad. So yeah, I don't mind watching the Bulldogs.
Yeah, look, it was a different game in your era. There's no doubt about it. There was, some fantastic one-on-one duels and some incredible players that you played with as well. We'd love to hear some of your memories of your best players. Who are your best teammates and why?
You go through life and you gravitate to people that sort of like obviously your mates and that. Scotty Wine was one of them for me. Mark Hunter was another. Nigel Keller was another. Simon Atkins, Dougie Hawkins, Brian Royal. But it's sort of like, if you call your mate, I'm still mates with Mark now and Scotty and Libba. Scotty Wine we used to sort of play up a little bit, on a Sunday night at the tunnel. We used to go there for a few drinks and drink the same. I always drink Scotch and Coke and just a ripper bloke to be out with, and so people like that you sort of remember. And, we probably wouldn't speak to each other for months, but then we do. It's fantastic. So that they're still your mates, which is really good.
And who was the most skillful of all, would you say? I mean, it's very hard to put a name to it, but
yeah, Leon Cameron was a really skillful player. Obviously, Dougie Hawkins, you know about him. Chris Grant was great. Mercurial player, even so, you go far as you say as Stephen Collinyuk. Like he wasn't a very tall player, but geez, he could play and left and right, pretty skillful. Brian Royal, we had not a bad side. Peter Foster's an half-back, he'd be very hard to play against. Tony Campbell. So it was some good times back then. We had some quality players.
Danny, we hear that you had aspirations to be a coach. Now, can you confirm this? Is this true that those aspirations were totally extinguished after an experience of being a runner for Rodney Eade?
Oh,
Can you tell us about the challenges of delivering Rocket's messages and the importance of getting them right, please?
Oh, dear. We went away. Mark Hunter and I went to Adelaide, and I don't know, we went to a race day or something after the footy as mates, and Mark got a phone call from Rodney Eade regarding, he said, Danny, I think I might be a chance to be a runner. Would you like doing it? I said, yeah, that'll be a great experience, Mark. You know what I mean? And Mark got a phone call from Rodney Eade saying, listen, we want you to be the runner. And obviously, Mark mentioned me as well. And he said, yeah, all right, let's have an interview. So Mark and we got back from Adelaide. We went to Rocket's office, would have been during the week. And he said, look, we're looking for a couple of runners. If you guys are interested, this is the role. You get paid a certain amount, which is bugger all. That was just, the experience was the best. But he did mention Rocket saying that, comes game day, I could call you any name under the sun, but I don't mean it, but this is what's going to happen. So we're prepared, more or less, yeah. And my experience as a runner was bloody hard, I tell you. But I'll tell you, it was a great experience. Like you get to sort of warm up with the boys, have a kick, have a bump and tackle, and you get into the rooms and listen to all the tactics and all that stuff. So it was a great experience, yeah. But to be a coach after that, I had second thoughts, yes.
Tell us about, can you remember any distinctive, I was running myself for a couple of years in the Golden Valley, so I know exactly how you're feeling, Danny. Give us an instance of a message he asked you to send out that maybe you didn't really want to deliver or got wrong.
There's a couple, but I'm not sure how far this goes, but there's a couple. One was to Brian Lake, and he said, go and tell Brian Lake, I had to say a few words to it. Like what he told me to tell him, I've ran out. I'm thinking to myself, I can't tell Brian like that. Do you know what I mean? He's going to whack me. So I go up to him, I said, mate, in a nutshell, your performance is shit out. You need to do something. You need to stick in your man. But listen, he's a nice bloke too. And Rocket, I get the phone, the phone's, and he goes, did you tell him what I said? I said, yes, mate, I did. And I'm hoping he never asked Brian if I told him what he told him. The other one, I'll be quick. The other one was we played West Coast. And after it was half time and it was the start of the third quarter, and it was about 30 seconds to go to start the third quarter. It was my turn to go. So we used to have a little notepad, the little yellows post stickers, whatever they are, and if there was too many messages at once, he'd write them down. So, but because we only had, say, 20, 25 seconds to go before the ball bounced, the phone rocket goes, you need to make these changes in the back line. And I got confused. So move here, move that. Yeah, move this, move that, and do all this. I said, yeah, no worries. So I've run out, and it's about 15 seconds before the ball bounce. I go halfway to the back line to change all these moves, and I forgot all what he told me. So I couldn't go, I didn't know, I couldn't go out to tell him, so I had to come back. As I've come back, the phone's waiting for me. He goes, you dumb, what have you done? I said, mate, I forgot all about it, Rocket, I'm sorry. And the ball's bounced. I wasn't his favourite back then, don't worry. Oh, it was good. And you know what? I actually did become a coach myself. I coached the girls 15 side, which was fantastic. Loved it.
Perfect, Danny. How did the girls under 15s team go that you coached?
Yeah, great. We won the flag the first year, and it was a great experience. So it was really good. My daughter played too, so that's probably why I coached. She said, Dad, I'd love to play. I said, mate, if you play, I'll coach for sure. So that was a good experience there, Matty.
Oh, yeah, there's nothing better than being a dad and watching your children flourish.
Yeah.
Magnificent. Danny, we're coming close to the end of the podcast today. Mm-hmm. We without a word of warning, and we know that you like pressure, we're going to put you in the hot seat here for a 60-second Bulldog quiz. Okay. Now, we're going to give you a tiny bit of power here. You're going to get to choose which category. So you can either select the 1970s as your category or the 1990s. Which would you like?
90s.
There's no surprise. Fantastic. Well, look, we've got 60 seconds on the clock. You can pass at any point. Now, currently, all the past players are put on a ladder, and Dougie Hawkins is at the top of the list. And he lets us know about it. So good luck.
Of course he does.
Knock him off. All right. Good luck, Danny.
Good luck, Danny. Go for it, mate.
Yeah.
All right. In the 1990s, the Bulldogs contested in only one drawn match during the 1990s. Is that true or false?
True.
It's false. We played in 4. James Cook won the club's 1997 goal-kicking award. Is that true or false?
True.
It was false. It was Minton Connell. The Bulldogs won more matches than they lost during the 1990s. True or false?
True.
Correct. Which player kicked the record 8 goals in a final in the 1990s?
Danny Delre.
Hey, which team did the Bulldogs play as their first match in that decade post the Fight Back campaign?
Oh.
Yes.
It was at home too, I reckon. It might have been, say, Melbourne.
It was the Saints. Who wore the number 19 for the Dogs between 1993 and 95?
Barry Stanfield.
It was Luke Beveridge. Which year did Steve Wallace retire?
95.
It was 96, and right on the siren. And we've got a question right on the siren. You like kicking after the siren, Danny, so let's go for it. No pressure here. Name the 2 official Bulldog captains during the 1990s. There are only 2 captains. Who were they?
Doug Hawkins was 1.
That's 1.
Scotty Wine was 2.
He's got it. Hey.
Mate. Danny, I reckon you're going to bookend. You and Dougie are going to bookend the results of this.
Well, the scores are coming up on the screen right now. Let's see how you did, Danny. Oh, and 6 points. That's not too bad, but Dougie still sits at the top of the tree.
Oh, no way. No wonder we played good footy together, because we could understand each other, see?
Absolutely. Okay, so Danny, before we let you go, were you at the 2016 grand final? You know, as a past player, watching that success, I imagine it, bring a tear to your eye just seeing after those years of toil. How was that experience for you, and were you there?
I was there with my son, Willis. We sat in the Ponsford stand behind the goals. It was fantastic. My dad couldn't come because he wasn't feeling the best, but we decked him out with the Bulldogs pajamas. So we kept ringing him during the day and FaceTiming him, and he was so happy. And I think third quarter, when we rang each other, and Dad said, look, I think we might be a chance here. And cut a long story short, the boys played up brilliant footy. their pressure was great, skill level was great. You know, Liam Picken was brilliant that day, as well as a few others. You know what I mean? And no word of a lie, the accolades that I got as a spectator that people knew, oh, well done, Danny. You know what I mean? And my son's with me; he's on my shoulders, and he said, Dad, you know, they still remember you. And we both started crying. It was unbelievable. It was just the biggest thrill ever, mate. Yeah.
Wow.
You've got the hair standing on the back of my neck hearing that, because I could just imagine your adrenaline and just that excitement, and being recognised all those years later as part of that story. That's what it's about.
100%. You know, like you think about it now and you get goosebumps. You know, I remember walking out. We're walking out along the ground, and you know, there's people everywhere, and you know, and just tap on your back and well done, Danny. And you know, I'm a supporter like anybody else, and I was, you know, I could say the same thing because I played there and that, and just felt really good and felt a part of it because I did wear the jumper for so many years and it just felt so good. And having my son with me was, he'll never forget it. I would never forget it either. It was just fantastic.
Danny, it's a great segue into how would you like to be remembered as your final message to our many followers on the Inside the Kennel podcast? How would you like to be remembered?
You know, just me being me. Like, I know I was good enough to play footy, but people, I love talking to people. I'm a people's person, you know, like just being remembered as a nice fella, that'd be great. You know what I mean? That played the Western Bulldogs for 62 games and not a big head or anything like that. So that's me in a nutshell. Like going to a pub and have a few beers with someone, perfect.
Good on you, Danny. Danny, look, on behalf of Maddie, on behalf of all our great supporters who are going to thoroughly enjoy this episode, Danny Delre, thank you very much for coming on Inside the Kennel podcast.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Maddie.
Danny Delre, ladies and gentlemen. How good.
Thank you.
Red in my heart, white in my veins, blue in my eye, red, white, and blue in my brain. I'm